Hello gentlemen, this is Chris and I thought I'd make this quick recording to show you what I've done since we met yesterday at the IU and give you an example as you move forward. So yesterday we talked a lot about the format of a lesson, what a lesson would look like and what types of activities it would, could, or should include. And I think you, in your course, have already set up a lot of this structure. And I believe we did that on the first day that we met. And then we sort of veered away from it as you were learning the tools that you could use to populate that structure. So I took the information that I set up in Pat's course yesterday about the structure, and I've added it to your course where it may not have already been, although much of it was already there. So let me show you what I mean. I'm in your course right now, and this is your menu at the left, and you added some items to this menu yesterday. And one of the items that has been there all along is this item called beliefs. This is actually called a content area. And so when you click on the beliefs content area, you'll see a few folders that were created. And you actually created these folders on our first day together. So one folder was called What are the Learning Patterns of Leadership, Learning Patterns of Teachers, and the third one is Learning Patterns of Children. And the idea was that around the topic of the learning patterns of leadership, you would provide some instruction, some insight into what that would look like, and that's your lesson presentation that you've already created and embedded. Now, I haven't watched this fully, so I don't know if it's the finished, polished one that you really want there, but it is a good example of what it will look like once you have that there. Now, you did this yourself. The other thing that you did is you followed up that presentation with some activities. One activity was a journal prompt, another activity was a blog activity, and the third one is an actual assignment, like a paper that you wanted them to submit to you. So you did the journal, the blog, and the paper activity all on your own. I may have helped you with those, but these were obviously activities that you thought fit or followed this presentation well. What I have added to this lesson after talking with the three of you yesterday about what should be included and which format you wanted to follow was I added an item at the top of the lesson called Essential Questions. And this is a place where you will edit this item using the double down arrow and the edit option to type a list of the essential question or questions, there might be more than one, that are related to this topic. So what are the essential questions for this key concept about the learning patterns of leaders? The other thing that we talked about is including in a lesson those key competencies targeted by this lesson. So also in this area, when you edit these essential questions, you could add a sentence or two describing what your learners will know and be able to do as a result of the lesson. So this first item is just a quick lesson starter and gives the learners the information that you would generally be saying to them if you were seeing them face to face. The next item that I've added to your lesson is an item called Key Terminology. One of the things that Pat showed me yesterday was how important it is to identify and solidify the terms that you'll be using, the key terms that you'll be using in your lessons and in your courses. So maybe collectively, the three of you should decide, based on each lesson or based on each unit, what are those terms we're going to introduce to our learners and which ones are we going to stick with. And so this item you could double down and edit and simply list the terms that you want to really reinforce in this concept. And again, these would be just the terms related to this particular concept, which is learning patterns of leadership, for example. So we have essential questions, a list of the key terms. Now eventually we'll have, I could do this or a developer could do this, I could show you how to do it, but eventually what we'll do with these terms is we'll turn them into interactive activities. And there's a tool for that that's very simple. The tool is called StudyMate, and it takes terminology and turns them into activities that help to introduce and reinforce those terms. So following your lesson presentation are the learning activities that your learners will participate in to gain and show their understanding of your presentation. There's also an item, and there should be probably an item in each lesson called reading resources. I'm sure that your course will consist of material that you want your participants to read. So as it relates to this lesson, which in this example is learning patterns of leaders, what are the things that you want your learners to read in order to help them gain an understanding or some insight? So this might be, you might edit this item to list a book that you want them to read, or maybe you found an article online that you want them to read. Maybe you found an interesting blog post that somebody wrote that you want to provide a link for them to get to that blog. I know that you write a blog, so maybe you copy one of your blog posts and post it in here in this course so that they can read what you're writing about. So at any rate, this reading resources item can be edited to provide for your learners the reading materials that you think is important for this, that you think are important for this lesson. And then we talked about journals, blogs, and assignments when we were together. So basically, this is your sample lesson, and you can follow this model for the other lessons in this unit. So your lesson begins with essential questions and key competencies, followed by important terminology. Could be just 3 to 5 words or terms, or it could be more. That's up to you. Your lesson will contain a presentation, the instructional piece. And your lesson will contain learning activities. You may actually have more than one lesson presentation, and they may be sprinkled in between activities, and that's totally fine. Or you may just have one presentation and one activity. Now, some of the activities that you have to choose from, in your samples, you practiced with a journal and a blog. But remember, there are a whole bunch of others that you could include. And let's look at a list of some of the learning activities that you have to choose from. Like we said, it could be a journal activity or a blog post. You could post a discussion prompt, and a discussion board is a lot like a journal where your learners can read and comment on one another's posts, but it works really well for topics that can be debated. There's also a tool we haven't even explored yet, which is called the voice board. It's much like a discussion board, except instead of being text-based, it's voice-based. You could, in one of your lessons, insert a link to a live classroom session, like a Collaborate session. Maybe you intend to meet your students live online at a certain time. And in that live classroom session, perhaps then you're going to lead the way in generating discussion. Or maybe you'll ask some of your participants to give a quick synopsis or presentation about the lesson material they've read so far. So you can have live sessions and incorporate them. They could be face-to-face or they could be online. That could be one of the learning activities in your lesson. And of course you can have assignments, like when you want your participants to submit a Word document to you or to create a PowerPoint presentation so that they can demonstrate their understanding. And you can actually build assessments like quizzes or tests into your lessons. So this is an example. And you have one lesson that's got a lot of completion. You have the presentation laid out, and you have some activities based on that presentation. now you're sort of filling in the blanks to make this a lesson that someone could complete, and you're giving them the tools to complete it and participate in it. And I know that you have all of this laid out in PowerPoints, but now we need to put it in the Blackboard format so that your participants have the tools to interact with one another, which they don't have in PowerPoint alone. So hopefully this helps give you an idea and example to follow as you work on your other lessons. Remember, what we talked about is by the March 15th date, which is our next meeting date, having each of you complete one unit, and think of a unit as one big idea. In Duff's case, one big idea might be the beliefs section, which has 3 folders or 3 lessons to complete. Or it could be the future, big idea of future, which would also eventually have multiple lessons, could have multiple lessons. So in Pat's example, the big idea that he started working on is defining mass customization. So by March 15th, Pat should finish developing the lessons that define mass customization and let people explore why to do it and how to do it. So each of these lessons will have a lesson presentation and some essential questions. And each of these lessons will have some learning activities that focus specifically on that key concept. So Pat, in your course, I have placeholders here. There's no details yet. It's just a guide for you so you know how to lay out the lesson based on what we talked about the last time we met. Jay, in your course, you already have some content created, and so you can move forward, maybe try to focus on one particular unit or one particular big idea and start building out those lessons the way that I've described for Pat and Duff. Now, I brought into your course, Jay, a sample content area, and I have it hidden so that your learners don't see it. But this sample content area just shows that lesson layout that we talked about, and I used Pat's lesson as an example. So this isn't a lesson you need to develop. It's just an example so that you can see what the layout of a lesson should look like in order to be consistent. So hopefully this helps you understand sort of the importance of the structure of the class, but also have a goal of, by March 15th, completing one of these big ideas. And by completing, I mean developing the lesson presentations, inserting the learning activities that support those presentations, and of course, you can contact me through Blackboard IM at any time you see me online, or you can email me, or if you'd like me to attend a Blackboard Collaborate session to help you with anything, I can do that. Our next meeting is March 15th. I will be joining you remotely, so I believe the 3 of you will be meeting together at a time and place of your choosing. I will be logging into Blackboard Collaborate to join you and answer your questions. Okay, good luck. Thank you. Contact me with questions.